welcome back to our final video. In this video, we're going to be building the JavaScript for our site. If you've made it this far, congratulations. We've built this entire website using HTML and styling it with CSS. The last little piece that we need to build is this piece right here. Right now, all of our education is squished into one box, when really this should be a slider. So if we take a look at our design, we can see here that this should be a slider with our education here, one piece of education per slide. So instead of them all being squished. Okay, in order to achieve this, we're gonna have to make a few small changes to the HTML and CSS, and then we will build the JavaScript portion. First things first, let's head on over to our HTML. We're gonna scroll down to our education section and just refamiliarize ourselves with this section. So we've got a section with a class of education, and then inside of that, we've got an H2, we've got a div with a class of slider, a div with a class of slides, and then each of our slides is a div with a class of slide singular. And then down here, we've got two anchor tags, so two links with arrows pointing left and right with a class of previous and next. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to change these arrows into some ASCII characters. So I really don't like that this arrow is red. VS Code right now is not understanding that this is not a mistake. It's not understanding that we actually want an arrow pointing left. So I'm just going to delete that, and I'm going to change that to ampersand LT semicolon. And then for my right arrow, I'm going to change that to ampersand GT semicolon, and I'm going to save that. I'm just going to double check that that didn't break anything. Nope, didn't break anything. We still have our arrows going left and right. Okay, perfect. Next thing I want to do here is I just want to add a class of active to my first slide. And what I'm going to do is when a slide has a class of active, I'm going to show it. Otherwise, I am going to hide it. I'm going to do display none. So let's just jump on over to our CSS. We can scroll down to our education section. So somewhere around line 128, I'm just going to scroll to the bottom of that section, and I'm just going to write the styles for that. So by default, I am just going to say slide is display none. Okay, and then slide.active, so anything with the class of slide and the class of active is going to be display, let's change that back to display flex and just make sure that that works. Not exactly, we'll change it to display block. There we go. Display block is just going to say show. There we go. I don't like that there's no margin up here. Let's try that one more time. Let's change it to display flex. Okay, and then we can say flex direction column. Okay, and then let's try justify content center. And there we go. Yeah, that's centered nicely now. So I think that looks a little better. So that's what we'll leave it as. So slide is display none by default. Slide active gets display flex, flex direction column, which is going to stack everything. And then justify content is now controlling this axis here, the vertical axis. And we're going to change that to center things nicely along the vertical axis. So it's centered nicely in the middle of our slide. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do, we're going to write some JavaScript. So I'm going to head back over to my index.html, and just above my closing body tag, I am going to connect my JavaScript document right here. So we write the script tag for that. So script, and then tab will open and close the script tag for you. And then inside of our opening script tag, we want to use the attribute src, which is source. And we want to tell the HTML document where to go to find that JavaScript document. So right now it's in a folder called JavaScript, and it is a file called main.js. Okay, we're going to save that. And we're going to make sure that these two documents are talking to each other. So in order to check JavaScript in the browser or debug JavaScript in the browser, we can use our dev tools. So if you're on Google Chrome as your browser or Firefox, you can right-click and click Inspect. That'll open up your developer tools, and we want to head on over to the console. I'm just going to clear what's there. So right now there's nothing in the console. We can go over to our JavaScript file, and we can write console.log. This is a function that will write something to our console, and we're just going to write a string. A string is just a bunch of characters, so letters or numbers inside of quotations. You can use single quotes or double quotes in JavaScript. It doesn't matter, just pick one and be consistent. So we're going to write the string "it's working." And we're going to save our JavaScript document, and then we're going to head back over to our console, and we can see right here, we've got "it's working." You can ignore the other two errors. They are from the live server. So yeah, we can just ignore those, but "it's working" is what we want to see there in the console. Awesome. So together, we're going to write our first function in JavaScript. A function is a way to protect a block of code and make it reusable. So we can write some code inside of a function, and that code will not run until we call that function, and then we can call that function on our page as many times as we would like. So we are going to write our first function, and we are going to call it show slide. So we're going to write the functionality to actually show our slide that we want to see. So we're going to write the function keyword, and we're going to give the function a name, show slide, and then we are going to add parentheses and curly brackets. Inside of the parentheses, we can pass what is called a parameter. So we can put a parameter in there. I'm going to put the letter N, short for number. So we're going to pass a number in there eventually. And when you call the function and you pass what is called an argument into those parentheses, then anywhere that N, or the parameter name, appears inside the function, it will be replaced with the argument. Okay? So inside of this function, we're going to write our first variable. We're going to say let slides equal, and we're going to say document dot get elements by class name, and we are going to go and find the class name slide. So what this does is it looks at the HTML document, it gets the elements with the class name that is passed into here. If you notice here, this is also a function, and the argument that we're passing into this function is slide. So this is a pre-built function by JavaScript that we have access to. And we are looking for the class name of slide. So it's going to grab anything on the page with the class name of slide. So we've got 1, 2, 3 slides on the page, 3 things on the page with the class name of slide. Okay, let's save that. Next, we are going to write some conditionals. So we're going to say if, if this is true, whatever we write inside of this conditional is true, then the code inside of these curly brackets will run. So we're going to say if n, which is our argument here, is greater than or equal to slides.length. Okay. There are a total of 3 slides, so slides.length will equal 3. However, each slide is given an index. The index starts at 0, so slide number 3 will be index 2. Okay, I'm going to write that as a comment here. There are a total of 3 slides, so slides.length will be 3. but the index of the slides starts at 0. So the third slide, so slide 3, will be index 2. I'll save that, and let me just word wrap here. So view, word wrap, and we'll just keep that all on one screen. Okay, so if n, the number passed in here, is greater than or equal to 3, then we are just going to set the slides back to the first slide. So we're going to say slide index equals 0. And right now we don't have a slide index, so we're just going to declare a global variable here. So this variable will be accessed anywhere in our program, and we're going to declare that up here. So we're going to say let slide index, and we'll start it at 0. Okay, I'm using the let keyword here because I want to update this variable. Okay, let allows us to declare a variable and update it later in our program. If we declare this variable with a const is a constant variable, so we couldn't change it later on. So we want to let here. Okay, now we've got to take the other case into consideration. So if n is less than 0, okay, so if we're on the other end, if n is less than 0, so if we're on 0 and we try to go back a slide, then we want to say slide index equals slides dot length minus 1. So if we're on 0 and we press the back arrow, we want to go to the very last slide, which is slide 2. So it'll be slides dot length 3 minus 1, which will bring us to slide index 2. Okay, next thing we want to do is we want to go through every single slide, and we want to remove the class of active. So we want to hide all of the slides and then just display the one that we want to see. So we're going to say for, so we're going to write a loop here. A loop does something over and over and over in programming until a certain condition is met. So we're going to say for let I equals 0. I is just a number. It is where we are starting our loop. So we're starting our loop at 0. What I is going to do is hold the place for our index. So we're going to start our slides at 0. I is less than slides dot length. So I is going to loop once, twice, 3 times, and then I is going to be 2 on the third loop. And that slides.length is 3, so it will stop looping after that. And then we're going to say I plus plus. So we're going to increase I by 1 on every single loop. Okay, here we're going to say slides, square brackets, I. Okay, so this would call on the first loop, slide 1, so it would be index 0. So slides, square bracket 0 is slides with the index of 0, which is slide 1. On the second loop, I is 1, so it would be slides bracket 1, which would be slide 2, index 1. On the third loop, I would equal 2, so it would say slides, square brackets 2, which is the third slide, which is index 2. Okay, and so it's going to loop through every single slide, and we're going to say class list dot remove active. So if there was active on any of our slides, it's going to be removed from all of them. And then finally, what we want to do down here is we want to set our slide index, so the one that we want to see, to active. So we're going to say slide index dot class list dot add, and here we want to add the active class. So here we are adding active to the slide index that we want to see. And here we are removing active from all slides. Okay, here we are adding active just to the slide index that we want to see. Okay, so I'm going to save that. If we go to our page, we can see like nothing's working yet. We still have a little bit more code to write. So I'm going to write one more function. I'm going to write us a little helper function up here, and I'm going to call this function change slide. I'm going to pass in n. Again, we could pass in anything we wanted here. N is just holding the place of our number. And then inside of this function, I'm going to call slide show, show slide, show slide, which is our function name. And I am going to say slide index plus equals n. So I'm going to update the slide index with whatever number we pass into the function. So if we pass in 1, then slide index will equal 1. If we pass in 2, slide index will equal 2. If we pass in -1, then slide index is going to equal -1. And then it's going to run this code down here, and it's going to determine which slide to actually show. Okay, so I'm going to save this. We've actually finished writing all of our JavaScript, but we will come back and talk through it in a moment. If we head back over to our website, we can see this is still not working, so that's okay. We actually need to call the function. So we're going to go back to our index.html one more time, and on our previous next anchor tags here, we're going to add one more attribute inside of the opening tag. And when do we want to call the function? Well, we want to call the function when the user clicks on either that back arrow or that forward arrow. So we're going to say on click, then we're going to call the function name. So we're going to call change slide, and we're going to pass in -1 if they want to go back a slide. So we're going to minus a number from the index if they want to go back a slide. And here we're going to pass in 1. So on click, change slide 1. So if they click the right arrow, then we want to go forward a slide. So back a slide, forward a slide. Okay. Let's talk through how this will work, and then we'll test it. So if we go back to our JavaScript, if we click the back arrow, we're going to get -1. Okay, so we're passing in -1 for n. It's going to update slide index to be 0 - 1. So slide index is then going to be -1. That's going to get passed into this function here as n. Here we're going to check if n is greater than or equal to slides.length. It's not, right? N is -1, and slides.length is 3. So this is not true. So we're going to skip over this block of code, this if statement right here. We're going to skip over that. Then the next if statement is going to run, and it's going to say if n is less than 0. Well, n is less than 0. N is -1. In that case, we are going to set the slide index to equal slides.length, which is 3, -1, which is 2. So the slide index is going to be 2 now. Okay. We're going to loop through all of the slides and remove the active class. And then here, we're going to set the class of slide 2 to be active. So we're going to see the very last slide in our slide show. Okay, let's test that theory and see if it works. So I'm going to close this, and I should be able to click through my slides. Okay, so this is slide 0. If I click on this arrow, n is going to be -1. Okay, so if n is less than 0, it's going to make the slide index slides.length, which is 3, -1, which is 2, which should be the index of the last slide. So if I click on this, it should show us the last slide, which it does. UCLA is our last slide. This is index 2. University of Minneapolis is index 1, and University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee is index 0 for a total of 3 slides. So 0, 1, 2. And now our JavaScript is working. All right, that's it, folks. We've finished this website. You've built an entire resume website with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've learned a lot, and stay tuned in the future for more of these Code Along series. Thanks again.